Okay.
Okay, we're official.
Yes.
Good to go.
Okay. Oh, let me put my video on. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second reading for Pima Community College Library's poetry series. We have 3 readings this April in acknowledgement or tribute to National Poetry Month. Perfectly timed to our mutual quarantine for those of us who are in isolation, whatever form. Today we have Bojan Lewis joining us. All of our readers this month are from Tucson. So Bojan is, as I'm sitting where I'm sitting, he's somewhere around here. And he's also right in front of us. Hello.
Hello.
So I'll just say a couple words about Bojan and then he'll read for us. He's currently teaching through both the American Indian Studies and the Creative Writing programs at the University of Arizona. I think you're about to complete your first year there.
Yeah.
So an auspicious end to the year. His most recent book is called Currents, which was published by BKMK Press, a book that we do have in our library collection, currently inaccessible, but for future patrons to know that. He also has a nonfiction chapbook called, excellently called, Troubleshooting Silence in Arizona, which was published by a chapbook press called the Guillotine series. They focus their work on speculative fiction and radical nonfiction. As far as I'm aware, you also recently completed a book of short stories.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can all look forward to seeing that someday. In some form. I also want to personally recommend this anthology, which I've been reading through. It's called Shapes of Native Nonfiction, Collected Essays by Contemporary Writers. It's published by the University of Washington Press. And it includes 2 really extraordinary essays by Bojan. Again, University of Washington Press, if people are supporting publishers wherever they are right now. So we're going to have Bojan read, and then we'll have a short Q&A afterwards. People are welcome to submit their questions through chat, and then we'll select a couple of them, and then we'll be done. So here's Bojan Lewis.
All right. Well, yat bene she Bojan Lewis Shia nakai de nishle la shihi e bashichin tatnisana e dashache belagana e dashanella. Coming at you from my basement studio library office in my house. I'm gonna read 7 poems for you. A few from the book, and then a few that are new, and one that's really very new. So just to give you a scope, so here's the book, Currents. I'm going to begin with a poem that's part of a larger 10-page poem called Nuestro Señor El Deseado, and it's a sort of long ekphrastic poem about a Paul Pletka painting that hangs in the Phoenix Art Museum. So this poem is called Upper Level North Wing Western American. Most of the sectioned rooms get no sun at all. Strange evidence of the architect's knowing nada of what his container will hold. High rectangle windows and ones elongated in the corners offer natural light, though if the sol or estrellas darken, there's no technician to change them. Guy working hourly replaces bulbs, troubleshoots breakers. Such are the conditions of on-loan work, necessitates begging. The soul, like rain, requires a choir yowling the absence of crops and the slow plop of droplets that transform into sudden floods and bruising hail. The here you go shushing wails. These days, donors commission creators, label any genesis sacred. So storm wall of darkness and dust have become useless emotional offerings. Blood is what's wanted, churches raised from ground where the natives have suffered. Look and pay attention. The fanciful God in heaven haven't let go. Anyway, we fear the indigenous, not the worship of ourselves. This next poem is called Evening Beneath Dust. I'm blowing smoke, ill thoughts toward the shadows of old bungalows built before dusk became an ember of ozone and smog. The highway is smashed with too many glasses for me to drive east to my sister, who stays with every light on, so no uncertainty of the darkness can reach her. She sleeps days. The house's high ceilings incubate her, while the sun guards the windows, doors, and closets. Forces into the open a jealous deliverer whose only opportunity to affect comes on nights with no moon. The prayer my sister recites calm though hardly quell, like wafers and wine. Thoughts of saviors from foreign lands where boundaries, like imagined barriers bisecting an ocean, summon the idea God or creator. My sister calls our mother and father once to ask if the Chiris of our Dene history can be translated into demons listed in a Gotia. They know that any grow from love's demise. So when I call her finally, after hours walking avenues of proposed guilt, it's not her I hear, but voicemail. I say this: old Abraham, the sheep of subservience, denied God Isaac, or was it that God denied God? Abe's blade made domestic, he skinned a bush-caught ibex, offered it burnt. His boy ignited the sticks of the altar pyre he assembled, hungered at what wasn't his to eat. Isaac spent 200 years at the pitch end of wells digging water. His name, laughter fits when nothing funny was done. Let's assume angels tickled him. Why consider drugs, bipolarity, or a curse? He'd been divined already. It's lonely in the thirst of the sun and the drowning of a well. The silhouettes in the houses around you will dance on occasion. It might not be a two-step or waltz, but a bad lamp, some faulty wiring, a violent flicker that gets you worried. Not knowing Shiteja is an unwanted voltage, a flood, a current engulfing you. I think I chose poems that have some amount of isolation to them, whether it be like mental health, addiction, like physical isolation, work isolation. I worked as an electrician for many years and often worked alone for 12 hours a day. So I had a lot of time to think and sit with myself. So, and that's a large part where this book came from. This poem is called Arc Flash. The stars went off and on, as if wired by the hell-with-it electricians tired of lighting scrap-patched houses connected by threads of pre-dawn smoke to invisible weavings in the sky. Dim answers and silent questions. Cattle, gaunt and wanting, grazed between weeds across the valley, interrogated the dirt of Wash and Creek. How long since you've been clay after rain? Startled awake at midnight and under influence, I sought my car to kill the soft snores beside me, hauled ass out of urban desert decay to sandstone cliffs 5 hours away, where centuries of wind and more recent roadway gusts have made a half pipe of its base, though not enough to topple the edge of the messless level. Hours from Phoenix, oasis greedy and artificial, I needed crystal, my dad's home and ceremony, less familiar mountain tobacco, not to guide my spirit used to mornings being lit, but to remind my tongue of blood, cold coffee made by other men's women who dispel me with smokes from cheap packs set within reach on their knees. Maybe they wish aside from my soon departure that I shared their danger. Bastards who make home, confinement, and needs hush. I left and arrived months before the rainy season, though cuts along the cliff face over crystal shimmered with mica, like stars burnt out, taking eons to reveal their absence in myth-heavy constellations. The sun risen isn't for me, cattle being herded, or darkness in the room I left to wake alone. Here, a few cars idle without drivers, warm up before the workday, while smoke from houses vanishes and releases the night sky. The last one from the book I'll read is called Prayer. It's in 4 parts. Prayer. My system is ruined by foreign pathogens blooming. I call it more or less blood, created for me. Creator, should I call it you? I don't dream or rest. On this exhausted circuit, I'm in pursuit. Better to forget, keep trying, do simply until done. There's no water here, but life is. Sun and moon thread this ground, the walk, the weaving. If I get another life, complaints will be missing. Fused phases arcing, sudden, temporary. Sound bites for short films. Those are from Currents. My dad also, this is a chalk drawing he did, so it's kind of cool to collaborate with him in that unintentional regard. So the next few poems I'll read are part of a new manuscript that has a title and everything. I'm working a lot in couplets, in sort of essaic, poetic prose, and then a whole string of ghazals, which is in Arabic and Urdu form. This poem is called Black Days, and it's for the poet Adrian C. Lewis. There are 15 scorpions pressed apart with a stick used for stirring paint I need to tell you about. Couldn't tell you how they dwelled, haven't killed enough. They emerged through cracks in the block wall, separating each box of this Cro-Magnon neighborhood. I can tell you I wept, smashing sections as they escaped, moving like those fuckers from Alien flicks. Anyway, it's been countless years since I searched the yard perimeter, black light, a false beacon in the muted night. A 9mm nestled against my hip, bullet chambered to blast the skinheads my sister told of, frantic, having driven the city all night. Among dead-end asphalt synapses, we wait for dawn's liminal thread to offer blurred visions for sleep. She described a battle between cops and neo-Nazis. I perceived it as singular and internal until somewhere in the conflict, the house was entered, ruined, and left as such. This ruin never occurred. It was a wreck, I'm embarrassed to speak on. A false bend a quarter too far. I want to be clear about the scorpions. My wife crept behind me with her phone while I, among the apparitions of depression, released to safety and cleared the house of the nothing there. Hateful, I hadn't killed anything. This next poem is called The Nature of Mortal Illness. As a kid, skeptical of pollen plumes making my skin ash, mind migraine heavy, and nasal cavity a sanctuary for deformed crustaceans seeking terrible refuge in a false moisture, I wanted to believe this question. Are my brothers and sisters debris humming because they're what's left? I'm no oceanic world, no fossilized imprint subject to excavation, but a man's sickness is left well enough. Common cold, chromosome infection, viral ethnography, southwestern desert lung fungus. If there's safety within the earth, then I'll go there. Otherwise, where do I find me? Is it clear Gila monsters border extinction? You endangered or enamored with its development? Flint, the sacred bolt of thunder, the syringe end of lightning can turn body to ribbons, quilt it mosaic again. Can burn a thirsty land, can armor one against the ill world and suffocate today's protective notion of tomorrow. In our history, the Gila monster might tell you, get your sickness away from me, but it's only to teach you to ask questions correctly, offer the necessary smoke, dispel phobia and the impatience for curmudgeons with wandering syntax. Lesson, if it kills you, spit at it for sure, kick dirt its way. If it reminds you of your ways, your doubts and regrets, and that shitty relative who molested you, curse it, shake its hand, which is the hue of your hand, with black magic, ground fine from a loved one's bones. Remember, in agreement with death, for death? New tractome subdivisions explode from an imploded aquifer crusted with alkaline skeletons, shaped like a brontosaurus. We're headed there, right? A studied, imagined subterranean being, thing, explicated, cited as super fun. That Earth great once like a marauder murderer, but more Billy Cyrus than Prince. When prospectors and pioneers sweated this tierra, this Nahastan, they feared the toxic breath and bites of damn near every living thing. See this now, the earth and its things. Medicinal, panacea, antipsychotic, whatever the fuck, labeled illegal unless farmy. As a kid, when I think of it now, I was stupid. Grunge-trodden and late blooming bony, I wanted to breathe the confidence to say nice things, to experience keggers. However, I was opposite the decorated locker and shower room. If I possessed venom, I was built over and unable to relocate. But this isn't about high school, which doesn't matter. It's burial, in tradition, and home. Beyond the urban heat of this concrete desert on land as barren and at times hot, piles of yellow cake decorate Deneta like the tempting skin of dart frogs. Nature's governance, protection. When we fail our hearts, the blame is inverted, like ice caps for summer, a crucifix for clean water and flowers. It can't end this way. The wind, exterminator, a great prop plane dusting the world, a heart so unheart it forgets itself. I'll read one more. This is the newest poem I've written. It's a hustle. Well, sort of based on a hustle. I'm starting to break the form as I move through a sequence. This is called Hustle 8. In the PCIU, the bow of my right shoelace falls out, linoleum dragged. In the PICU, I count 2 minutes between cries for sucrose-coated pacifiers, 5 for an occluded TPN, 15 for low oxygen plinth waves, every 4 hours Precedex, sponge baths daily. 7 translucent tubes tunnel, 1 bilious remover, another a respirator shushing the minutes and hours and cc's of the weeks we've measured life by. Seated next to a phalanx of infusers, reading Bulgakov, disheartened by ingredients needed for a vampire named drink, a pandemic exacts itself outside. Our hair thickens, curls in myth and isolation, migraine cries muted with sugar water. Saguaros beyond the window glass ignore us, millimeters by millennia. 1980, I grew the decade with my mother wired and incision stitched. That I'm ineffective against your hunger, I tire, spiral inward toward indifference. Once, I disappeared to Philadelphia, left for the funeral of my only grandma, returned to a single accomplishment, roof repair during earthquake, green swirling skies. Nothing much matters other than you're here, the week's week, rubberized beds in other units stripped of sheets, you sleep and I see you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. So does anybody have any questions? If not, I have a question to start. And not to put Bojan, you and your family on the spot, but I know you recently had a child, as you talk about in that last incredible poem. They are a newborn. So I'm curious as to how living with and now raising this tiny being has changed or influenced your relationship to language?
She's here, by the way.
Yeah, she's right there.
Whoa! Wow.
Well, one, I'm not sleeping. We had a rough night with her last night and didn't really sleep. So language is evading me sometimes. So that's why I think writing in a form like a puzzle helps. Then it's just putting words and counting things into a container. And it's just giving me like a new vocabulary and nomenclature. I mean, when we were in the pediatric ICU with her, I mean, there's just all kinds of things that, you know, all these phrases and acronyms that I didn't understand, and everything was about timing and repetitive process. And there was an insanity and an discomfort in that. So that's also, I think, part of early parenthood is like, you know, she's going to eat 4 ounces. She pooped 7 times today, or peed 7 times today, shat twice. It just becomes this like number repetitive thing. So trying to harness the ability to fill that with language and think about that language is, I think it's changing a lot of things, especially the exhaustion and sleeplessness.
We have a question from Alexis. What native authors would you recommend?
I would recommend Abby Chabot-Noy. I'm teaching her in my class. Craig Santos Perez, Sherwin Bitsui, Jake Skeets, Joan Kane, Santi Frazier, Jennifer Forrester, Layli Long Soldier, all of Joy Harjo's work, of course. I taught a Joy Harjo class last semester. So this is where language starts failing me, and then my brain starts to shut down. But start there.
We have a question from Monique. You mentioned you worked as an electrician. How did you get started as a poet?
I've always sort of written poetry, maybe since like college, maybe a little as a senior in high school, just kind of messing around, rhyming stuff. I don't know. I don't remember, but probably around like undergrad, I took a class with Jim Simmerman and took all his classes and was able to take grad workshops as an undergrad. So I think there, just studying form. And, you know, poetry doesn't pay shit for the most part. So you got to have a job and, you know, as an electrician. So, but that's changed. Now I'm a professor and all I have to think about is poetry.
Does anybody else have any questions? If not, I want to thank Bojan again. Thank you for sharing your work. Thank you for sharing your family, your experiences. We're gonna put up some of the other writers that he recommended on our new Twitter account, as well as links to his own work. And then we have one more reading this month. Diana Marie Delgado, also from Tucson, who works at the Poetry Center, is going to be reading same time, same Zoom meeting next Friday. So thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you, Bojan, again for reading your work.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for everyone for taking time out of your day.